Hey guys, this is Jay Arrington from Greenbriar Studio. In this video, I'm going to start a rough mix of some drums and share with you my thought process as I go along. Here is a raw clip of the audio before I do any processing. I'm going to start with the overheads. You'll notice that these are panned backwards just so that I can get the crowd perspective of the panning. Here are the overheads by themselves. First thing I'm going to do, that I actually do with all of the drum tracks, is add the Slate Vcc. These are the rough settings I usually do with the, for this project I've been using the Brit 4KE. Push it until the needle's about at 0. I'm going to go ahead and add an EQ to it, but I'm not going to do much yet. I'm just going to do a high-pass filter at 80 Hertz. That's going to take out some of the low end that's kind of booming through the room. There's a lot of bass coming through a PA system and the kick right below the overhead microphones that I'm trying to control a little bit. I've found that if I go much higher than 80 Hertz, I end up losing a lot of the low end of the snare drum, a lot of meat from the snare drum. For this project, most of the songs were played with brushes, and I didn't get a lot of volume from the cymbals. The first thing I tried to do to fix that was add a compressor and actually compress pretty aggressively to get the dynamic range smaller so that I could hear more cymbal. And in the process, it actually added a lot of energy to the drums, and I like what it did. Usually I would crush a room mic to get a lot of that drum energy. But in this case, this is kind of a substitute. So I'm going to start getting the threshold down. Getting it pretty aggressive sounding. Fast release. I'm going to start it there for now. So once I have the basic overhead sound, then I go through and check the individual other drums. In this case, it's just a kick and snare. This is a really simple setup. Great drums, great drummer. It's just pretty easy for me to get the sound I'm looking for in this session. So let's listen to the snare top. Then bring in the overheads. I want to keep the balance between the overheads and the close mics actually a little bit overhead heavy. It makes more of a cohesive sound in this particular setting, in this mix, and I'm going to be doing some close mic parallel compression later, so I know that it's going to kind of push those close mics louder against the overheads, and it's going to balance out later. I'm going to go ahead and start to put the virtual console channel on here. Gonna get the input on there, right. One thing I'm gonna check is the phase. The snare got very thin there, so I know that it's good the way it was. I'm gonna leave that alone for now and add in the bottom snare mic. Let's check this out. In this case, the snare sound is thicker with the phase reversed on the bottom snare. That is usually the case. You know, I've heard that a lot in videos and other tutorials. But actually, in a lot of cases, I find that the top snare microphone is actually the one that needs to be reversed compared to the overheads, which is really interesting. I a lot of times end up flipping the top snare mic but leaving the bottom one alone. It's just good to check to see which way sounds better. All right, mute the snares and go to the kick inside. Let's check this out. It's very subtle, but the kick inside sounds better flipped as well. Before and after. All right, then let's check out the outside mic. I think that's going to be the winner, not reversed. Let's check the kick mics together. Yeah, I think I'm hearing a little more low end with the polarity normal. I'm liking that balance so far. If you'll notice, I don't think I've done any EQ other than this filter so far. And that is because I first want to see how much I can shape the tone of the drums as a whole on the drum bus before I start EQing individual drums. I've found that that gives a much more cohesive sound and can save some time as opposed to trying to sit there and dial in, you know, one drum at a time. Let's just see how this sounds. I'm still leaving the hi-hat microphone out. I don't think I heard any hi-hat going other than a stomp, and I don't think bleed-wise I'm going to be able to use it, so I'm leaving the hi-hat out right now. I immediately love what that did to the drums as a whole on the drum bus. That's a 2.5K shelf on 4 on this API 550B. Makes everything so much brighter, more detailed right off the bat. Another thing I usually like to try doing is to cut some 3 to 400. That's kind of like a typical drum shaping move. Let's see how that sounds in this case. That's pretty nice. I think I like 400 better. And then I'm going to add some low end. I like where that's going. I noticed that my level was getting a little high there, so I'm just going to bring this back maybe 5 dB using the output of the EQ. I think that's a good start. One thing I really enjoy doing for kick and snare is using this FG Bomber in the Slate bundle. Adds lots of energy. So I'm gonna give that a shot on the snare top first. Without it, that's good for now. I'm going to copy that over to the kick. All right. Okay, at this point, I'm going to kind of assess the tone of the kick and snare. Even though I did this EQ on the drum bus, I want to see, you know, what else could be done now to the kick and snare to shape them a little bit more into what I'm looking for. I typically like to add kind of a low shelf on the snare, add a little more meat. I like the way that's sounding. I really like bringing out the snare wires on the bottom of the snare drum just to add more detail. I kind of like to hear the snares rattling with even the kick drum hits. To me, it just adds more of a cohesive sound. I'm going to go over to the inside kick mic. Try adding some attack. Sometimes I find that 150 on a kick inside mic is nice to cut. It kind of gets in the way, sometimes in a way that you can't tell until it's gone. This outside kick mic, I'm going to see what I can do to sort of treat it like a sub kick maybe. Let's see what happens. Boosting like crazy at 50 hertz. Let's see how those sound together. A little loud. Just to make sure. Yeah, polarity is still good. Okay, this is in a nice place. Let's see. I'm gonna mute that. I'm going to now get the VCC on the bus. I love on the drum bus pushing the levels on this until it's just getting a red light or somewhere up in that range. It just adds something really cool to the drum sound. Maybe some more drive. That's good for now. Let me add... All right, bus compressor for the drums. You also notice that I did not do any compression on the close mics, on the kick or snare. Usually I find that the drum bus compressor does all the compression that I need. This is a basic preset I've started with. Let's see what we can get out of here. I'm looking for a lot of snare attack and punch coming from this drum bus compressor. Let's try the sidechain filter. Let the kick breathe a little bit. One other thing I forgot that I usually like to do. This is a really cool Transient Designer plugin. Because I've already done the FG Bomber on the kick and snare, I'm not going to add any attack to this. I'm just going to use the sustain function to make the kick and snare have a little bit more length to them. Without it, with it. Whoops. All right, so now I'm going to start doing some parallel compression. First thing I'm going to do is copy this bus EQ over. I found in the past that if I don't do the same EQ on these buses, I end up with phasing issues because, you know, the EQs are conflicting. I'm going to copy the mix rack over here. I'm going to keep that the same. Go ahead and add the monster. And set up these sends here. I'm going to send the inside and outside kick, the top and the bottom snare to the parallel compression bus. Let's see what we're working with. All right, sounds good. Let's blend it in. I only want it to add a little bit of volume, mostly just add thickness to the sound. I'm going to leave it there for now. Another thing I've been doing on these mixes that I really like is adding parallel tape compression. So I'm just going to name this parallel tape, move this guy over here. All right, same EQ. Then I'm going to go with the J37. I love the saturation on this plugin. I'm going to get this about up to 0 on the VU and then start saturating. That adds a lot of character when it's blended in, so let's see how that sounds. At this point, I'm noticing that I would like a little bit more low end, so I'm going to try using Vitamin across the buses. I'm going to turn this low frequency knob all the way down to mono. Going to go about 70 on this low shelf, and let's see. I'm going to mute these just so we can hear it without any possible phasing. I think that's a good start. I'm going to copy that over to the parallel buses. I'm noticing that the parallel compression bus is a little louder than I would like for it to be, so I'm just going to come over here. Lower the output there. Try one other thing. I know I'll probably end up doing this by the end. Drum reverb. For this drum reverb, I've actually been only sending, let's see here, what do I want? Where's gold plate? Sounds cool. I've only been sending the snare bottom microphone to the reverb. I've just been liking the way that sounds. Let's see. Bus 1 and 2. All right, let's check this out. context with the mix, with the drum mix. It's subtle, but it just adds some, you know, some length to the snare. Let's see. What else do I want to do? I'm not really sure at this point. I feel a lot of pressure because this is a video and I'm supposed to not pause or think about anything. Let's see. Sometimes I get to this point and realize that I only need to do something simple like just turn a fader up. All I did was push up the kick fader just now and it gave me the kick drum that I was looking for. The bottom snare is sounding a little bit loud to me. I'm sending it through the parallel compression buses just for some energy, but I feel like it's just a little bit loud overall. So I'm going to reduce the trim up here so that it turns it down across the board, even in the parallel buses. Let's see how that works. Let's bring in some of the room mics and see how that blends with the drums. Okay, so this is a basic starting point. If you want to hear the finished product of this song, it is called No Other. It's by 10,000 Fathers, and as of June 2017, it will be released. So go find it if you want to hear how the song turned out. And thanks for watching.